My husband took our daughter for a weekend with his parents, and she came back convinced I destroyed their family after hearing their manipulation. I, a 44-year-old female, have been married to my husband, Jeremy. For almost 20 years, we met through friends when we were in college. He was in a different department and was very outgoing, really extroverted, whereas I was kind of shy and quiet. So I was skeptical about dating him when he first asked me out, but he was persistent, so I ended up agreeing. We stayed together throughout our college years. Everything about our relationship was perfect, apart from the fact that his parents did not like me. Actually, not liking me is a tame way to put it. They hated me. Jeremy introduced me to his family after we had been together for a year. It took him that long because he had told me his parents were not the easiest people to deal with, and he had to prepare all of us for the first meeting. I had already introduced him to my family after we had been dating for a couple of months because I really liked him, and my family seemed to get along with him. He was sweet and wonderful to be around, and they had no complaints about him. However, it was very different for me when I first met his parents. There was no sense of warmth or friendliness when I went to their house for the first time. It was all very formal. They barely smiled at me, and even when they were talking to me, I got the sense that I was being interviewed for a job rather than just having a conversation. I was very nervous and tried not to talk too much because I didn't want them to sense my nerves and make a complete fool of myself. Jeremy came from a very different kind of family, and it was not something I was used to, so I was intimidated. They were rich, no doubt about it, but they were equally closed off. They did not approve of the fact that I didn't belong in their world. They were cold toward me the first time we met, and dinner at their place was an incredibly awkward affair. I couldn't even determine if I had made a decent first impression because they were so hard to read. I went home not knowing whether they liked me or not, but I guess I shouldn't have worried because that became obvious in the next couple of years. My family is pretty down to earth. We don't come from the same social class as my in-laws. My parents run a hair salon together, and it might not be the most glamorous job, but it paid the bills when I was growing up, and I'm proud of them. They're the reason my sister and I are educated today and can work the jobs we want, so I find it inspiring. But I think my in-laws would call it embarrassing. My father-in-law is a famous divorce lawyer. I had heard about him a few times before I met Jeremy because he was that well known. He had ads all over the city and owned his own law firm, so needless to say, he was pretty rich and had high-end clientele. But instead of being humble, he and my mother-in-law were snobby and looked down on me. They never said it to my face before marriage, but I could tell. I'm not an idiot. Jeremy and I visited them about once a month, and every time I would try to win them over and fit in, I'd turn into a completely different person around them just to get them to like me, but it never worked. I guess they could see right through me. Jeremy told me I didn't have to visit them or try so hard to get their approval because it didn't matter to him if they liked me. What mattered was that he loved me, and his parents' opinions wouldn't change that. Knowing that made me ease up a bit, and I decided to maintain my distance from them. Because they had been nothing but hostile every time I visited with Jeremy. I didn't feel comfortable around them, so that was that. But I feel like my decision to stop trying to win them over made them dislike me even more. Whenever we met after that, they would ignore me very pointedly, and it was hard to miss. They met my parents at our graduation ceremony, and boy, was that bad. We introduced our families to each other for the first time that day, and they were even more horrible to my parents than they were to me. I felt insulted. I could tell Jeremy was embarrassed by how his parents behaved with mine, and I knew he later took them aside and tore into them because the interaction had been really bad. My parents were visibly upset. That was the day I realized they might have money, but they definitely didn't have an ounce of human decency or courtesy and weren't as sophisticated as they pretended to be. Before that, I had been intimidated by them, but after that, I found them awful and didn't want anything to do with them. After we graduated, I told Jeremy I really wanted to be with him but couldn't stand his parents, especially after what happened at the graduation and how nasty they were to my parents. He told me I didn't have to worry because he had talked to them, and they promised to try to be better and accept me and my family. I was skeptical but stayed with him because despite his parents, I really loved him, and I still do. At 25, Jeremy proposed to me. We had been living together since graduating college, and we both had decent jobs. We were doing well for ourselves, and it was the perfect time to get married, so I said yes, and there was no looking back. Everybody was happy for us except my in-laws, of course. They didn't speak to anyone at the engagement party and just stood in a corner with sour faces. By then, I was used to them attending family events I hosted but never trying to be part of them. I knew it was obligatory for them. I was fine with it though. It didn't matter what they thought of me anymore. Because I was engaged to the man I loved, and that was enough. I didn't need their stamp of approval. In the months leading up to the wedding, I didn't think of anybody or anything apart from the wedding. I was really busy. My parents were paying for the venue and my dress, and I expected my in-laws to cover the rest of the expenses. I didn't speak to them about it, but Jeremy had, and they had agreed to it earlier. But about a month before the wedding, Jeremy came home quite pissed off and told me we would have to arrange the rest of the money ourselves because he had decided to cut his parents off and didn't want to speak to them anymore. When I asked why he would do such a thing, he told me they were trying to get me to sign a prenup before the wedding, which had a lot of clauses that would be very insulting to me. For instance, it didn't just demand that I disclose every detail about my financial status, like my property and assets, but also wanted me to disclose everything about my parents' finances. I thought that was crazy because I was the one getting married. My parents had nothing to do with it. Also, the agreement said that if my in-laws passed away while we were still married, I wouldn't receive anything from the inheritance and wouldn't be allowed to contest it. But the cherry on top was that they wanted me to agree that in the event of a divorce, all the joint assets we had purchased during our marriage would go to Jeremy, and I would be left with nothing. I would also not be entitled to any alimony, maintenance, or settlement if our marriage ended. If we had children together, I wouldn't receive any child support, even if I had full custody. It was a crazy, one-sided agreement, and nobody in their right mind would consider it. Jeremy told me his parents were trying to force him to get me to sign it before the wedding, probably, in an ill-disguised attempt to get me to leave him, but he saw through them, and it didn't work. They had told him they drew up the papers to ensure I wasn't after his money or inheritance, and that if I wasn't a gold digger, I'd have no issues signing. I think they took me for a fool because only an idiot would sign a prenup like that, and I wasn't one. Anyway, after that, we had no contact with his parents, and it was great. Our wedding went really well, and we were blissful afterward. I was relieved they were no longer part of our lives, and they didn't try to get back in touch with Jeremy or even talk to him after that. I guess their egos were bruised because we stayed together, and they didn't succeed in breaking us apart. They didn't reach out after we announced our first pregnancy or after I gave birth to our daughter, nor during the second. Jeremy and I have 2 children now, and things have been great. Our daughter Ellie is 16, and our son Kyle is 12. We're a happy family, but Ellie has been going through a teenage angst phase and has been rebelling. Her behavior has put a lot of strain on our relationship because, while I understand the teenage desire to stray from parents and experiment, I find it hard to let go of the control most parents want. I'm worried about her because she's been struggling at school, and I don't see her trying to do anything about it. All she does is gossip on the phone, and I hardly see her studying. I want her to do well in life, but every time I talk to her, she blows me off, and it ends in a fight. It's classic teenage behavior, and I know she'll come back to me, but for now, we're at loggerheads, at least until she grows up a bit. I know she still loves me, and I love her more than anything, but we're in a difficult phase right now. I know we can get through it. Jeremy has been helpful during this time, and he and Kyle are trying to keep the peace in the house. Things have been tense between Ellie and me, but we do have moments of love and affection like any parent and child. Unfortunately, there's also been a lot of tension. We're trying to work through it and navigate these new territories because we're both learning as we go. Speaking of parents, Jeremy reconnected with his a couple of months ago after his father suffered a massive cardiac arrest. His mother told him he might have lost his life, which led to his decision to reconcile, because both are nearing 70 and he doesn't want to end things on bad terms. I was supportive because no matter how they are as people, they're still his parents, and I know he misses them. I told him I didn't have issues with him trying to fix his relationship with them, and maybe someday I'd consider it, but for now, it was enough that he was rebuilding that relationship. I didn't want to get into it at the moment. I already had a lot on my plate with work and my relationship with Ellie, so I wasn't looking to take on extra responsibility and try to build a relationship with my in-laws. We decided he would keep in touch with them and visit at least twice a month because he was busy too, and make sure they were doing all right. I didn't have to be part of it, and on the days he visited, I could stay home and watch the kids. I was okay with it because it was fair. This has been going on for the past 7 months, maybe, and recently. He told me he wanted to introduce the children to his parents. This was a big move because they had never met their paternal grandparents. They had met my parents and spent a lot of time with them, but never my in-laws. They had always been told their paternal grandparents didn't want anything to do with our family, which was the truth. They had pushed us to our limits, especially me, and we had only responded by cutting them off. I didn't see anything wrong with that. Introducing our kids to their grandparents was a significant move, so Jeremy consulted me before going through with it. He said his parents had been asking him to bring the kids for months, and he had been putting it off, but now he thought it was time. I thought about it for a couple of days and decided it was fine by me, because if Jeremy thought it was okay, I trusted his judgment, so I gave the green light. Last weekend he was supposed to take both Kyle and Ellie to see their grandparents. They were pumped about it because it was a huge deal, but Kyle caught a nasty cold a couple of days before and couldn't leave the house because I didn't want him infecting others. So it was only Ellie who visited her grandparents, and I'm thankful for it because when she came back, she was completely brainwashed and turned against me. She was only supposed to spend a few hours at their place, but when Jeremy came back, he was alone. He told me Ellie got along with her grandparents like a house on fire, and they requested she stay for the weekend because it was their first meeting, and they wanted to catch up on lost time. He couldn't say no, and Ellie wanted to stay because she didn't want to leave their massive house. I couldn't blame her because her grandparents lived like kings, and we have a nice but normal lifestyle compared to them, so it was natural for her to want a taste of that. I wasn't happy about it, but it had already been done. I didn't want to make an issue out of it, so I didn't say anything at the time. But after the weekend, when Ellie came back home with Jeremy on Sunday evening, her attitude toward me had done a complete 180. She was acting like I was her archenemy or something. For the next couple of days she refused to talk to me normally and wouldn't even look me in the eye when she spoke or when I asked her anything. I tried to talk to her about her behavior and asked why she was acting like that, and she said it was nothing, but I knew it was something. She was ignoring me and acting like I wasn't even in the same room. I knew something had shifted after she came back from her grandparents' place, and I knew they were responsible. I talked to Jeremy about it, and he thought something must have happened at school. But even when she fought with her friends, she never acted that way with me. I knew my in-laws had something to do with it, but I couldn't blame them without being sure, because I didn't want to come off as trying to ruin Jeremy's relationship with his parents. However, the evidence fell into my lap 2 days ago. I was in Ellie's room because I wanted to borrow her phone charger, but while looking for it, her journal fell on the floor from under her pillow. It wasn't the right thing to do, but I knew she kept a detailed account of her life. So I decided to take a peek to understand why she was acting that way. I know it wasn't right, but I had to figure it out. I flipped through the pages and found the most recent entries and started reading. I went to the date when she visited her grandparents, and sure enough, there were almost 4 pages about how they had been filling her head with all sorts of crap about me. Apparently, they told her I was responsible for her not seeing them for so many years. They told her lies, and she believed them because we were already having a rough patch. They took advantage of it. They knew we had been having problems because Jeremy had casually mentioned it to them while visiting, and they decided to use the opportunity to drive a wedge between me and Ellie. They were successful because Ellie now believed I had ruined Jeremy's relationship with his parents all those years ago. They told her I forced them to cut them off, and that their only mistake was suggesting Jeremy and I move closer to them after marriage. I didn't like that, and decided I would take all their money, but not let my husband see his parents. They even told her they had paid for the house we lived in and taken care of all our expenses before we got married. Apparently, I'd been living off their money before I cut ties with them. Because Jeremy got a great job and I didn't need them anymore, they painted me as the perfect gold digger, and they were so convincing that my daughter believed them. I broke down after reading those pages, because she had written in her diary that she could no longer look at me the same way, and it was difficult for her to believe she was my daughter. I called Jeremy and sent him those pages. I was heartbroken and upset. I told him that if he ever visited his parents again, I would file for divorce. He was just as shocked as I had been and told me I didn't need to worry, he would fix it all. Then he hung up. Since that day, things have been tense, and his parents have been blaming me for him cutting them off again. Jeremy and I discussed it with Ellie, but she was outraged that I had gone through her diary and refused to talk to me. I've been trying, but it's not working, and we don't know what to do right now. If that wasn't bad enough, my in-laws have somehow gotten hold of my phone number and email address and keep sending me messages from various accounts and numbers, telling me I'm ruining everybody's life. They're calling me egoistic and self-centered and cursing me out, which is really bad for me right now because I'm already going through a lot. I don't need this as well. They think they didn't do anything wrong and call me selfish because I've always forced Jeremy to stop seeing his parents and break their family apart. It's been so difficult. I don't even know if I did the right thing by telling Jeremy I don't want him to see his parents anymore. Am I the asshole for telling my husband he's not allowed to see his parents anymore because they tried to brainwash my daughter into turning against me? Update 1. So, I spoke to Jeremy about what I was going through, like most of you suggested, and talking to him helped a lot. I was avoiding it because he was already upset about his parents, and I didn't want to add to it. Besides, I was feeling like a burden on the family and didn't want to talk to him and make myself feel worse because I was afraid, which is so stupid because I've been married to him for 2 decades, and I should know him better. He's my husband, and he's the only person I can truly talk to about these things. I told him what was bothering me, and the first thing he did was hug me for 5 minutes and tell me everything was going to be fine. I must have cried for at least half an hour after that because it was so sweet and reminded me exactly why I married this man. He always knows what to do to make me feel better, and I don't know how I got so lucky. Anyway, we discussed it, and I told him about the messages his parents had been sending me. He said he would put an end to it, and I didn't need to worry. Then I told him I felt bad that Ellie wasn't talking to me anymore, and that's where we hit a snag because it was a delicate and sensitive matter. All things said and done, I had invaded her privacy, which wasn't right, but what she was doing wasn't okay either. It was a difficult situation to navigate. Eventually, we decided we would talk to her, but Jeremy would do most of the talking because she was more likely to respond to him than to me. That's the plan right now, and I hope it works because she's been giving me the cold shoulder for almost a week now. It's very difficult for me to deal with as a mother. Update 2. Hi guys. So, Jeremy and I finally had that discussion with Ellie, and we've decided she and I are going to try therapy and talk to a counselor. Jeremy acted as the mediator while we were talking, and that really helped us communicate. She told me she feels like I try to control her life, which makes her feel like less of an individual, and that's why she goes out of her way to do the opposite of what I tell her, like a reverse psychology thing. Besides, she has enough problems at school, like drama with friends and bad grades, in a couple of subjects, and I'm adding to it by being overbearing at home. I tried to understand where she was coming from and explained that I was only looking out for her because I wanted her to succeed in life. When she didn't listen, I felt like she had no respect for me, which made me feel awful about myself. I also told her that the fact her grandparents could make her doubt me so easily really got to me, and I was disappointed about that. She apologized and said the only reason she believed them was because, subconsciously, she wanted a reason to hurt me because she was angry about everything. I guess that makes sense, but it's not something we can solve on our own, so we need to speak to a professional. As much as I love my husband, he's not qualified for this job. As of now, we're actively trying to fix our relationship, and I hope it works out. Until then, it's back to Kyle and Jeremy maintaining the peace in the family, but fingers crossed everything will be all right in no time. Update 3. Hey there. A lot of you have been asking for an update, so here it is. It's been almost 4 months since my last update, and things have been going pretty well. Ellie and I have regular therapy sessions together every weekend, and we're trying to work on our relationship. I think we're doing a good job because the fights we used to have decreased considerably. Now the pressure is off my husband and son to keep us from exploding all the time. It wasn't fair to them, but they handled us like champions, and I'm so proud of their emotional maturity. We've also decided to spend more time together as a family and make it a point to have one family getaway at least one weekend every month. I think it's good for us to bond because it's really helping our mental health. The best part is that Ellie is doing way better at school now. Her grades have improved considerably, and I think it's because I don't nag her all the time, so she puts in an effort on her own without me asking. That's great, and I'm so proud of her. My son is also doing great, and both my kids have given me so many reasons to be proud of them. My husband and I are also amazing and in love. Unfortunately for his parents, they weren't able to break us up, no matter how hard they tried. The messages stopped a couple of days after I told Jeremy about them because he told them he would expose them on social media and even press charges if they didn't stop. That worked, and now we're back to not speaking to them ever again. So, it's all good right now. I can't complain. Life is great. Thank you so much, all of you, for checking in. Looking back on everything that's happened, I feel like I've been through an emotional whirlwind. There's this deep ache in my chest when I think about how Ellie was turned against me. As a mother, knowing my daughter believed those lies about me, even for a moment, cut deeper than I can put into words. It's like a betrayal, not from her, but from the situation. My in-laws exploiting our rough patch to drive a wedge between us. I was angry, hurt, and honestly, scared that I'd lost her trust for good. But there's also relief now, like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Seeing Ellie and me slowly rebuild our connection through therapy gives me hope. Every small moment we share, like a laugh or a hug, feels like a victory. I'm learning to let go of that need to control her, to trust she'll find her way, and that's freeing in its own way. Jeremy's unwavering support has been my anchor. His love reminds me I'm not alone in this, even when I feel like I'm failing as a mom. Still, there's guilt. Guilt for reading Ellie's journal, for maybe pushing her too hard, for not seeing how my in-laws' toxicity could hurt us again. And there's sadness for Jeremy, who's had to cut off his parents twice now to protect our family. I hate that he's caught in the middle, but I'm grateful he chose us. I feel stronger now, like we're building something real and lasting as a family, but the scars from this ordeal are still there, a reminder of how fragile trust can be. I'm hopeful, though. Hopeful that we'll keep growing closer and that love will win out in the end.